Hello and welcome back. So today we'll be talking about some ways you can fight social anxiety, and there will be some background noise, but I'm filming this during the day, so you're just gonna have to deal with it. And so few people watch this anyway that I can't be bothered to keep it perfect. So yeah, this is the 5th video in the series about social anxiety, so if you haven't seen the first 4, I'd recommend checking those out because they make much more sense when you watch them in order. And this time it's extremely important because this video will not make any sense if you don't watch the 3rd and the 4th video. I'm going to start off with reminding you of how important therapy is, at least from my point of view. Now, people are different and therapy should be fine-tuned to their needs. This is why I don't want the series to be seen as a replacement to cognitive behavioral therapy. I want this to be an explanation of how social anxiety works and an encouragement to go seek professional help. However, I know not all of you can currently afford to start weekly therapy sessions, so to maybe make your life just a bit easier, I'll share a number of ways you can fight social anxiety, all of which will be based on my own experience as a social phobic individual. Let's start with treatment ideas derived from the Clarke-Wells model. As I've said before, it's hard to do this without therapy because you need to build a Clarke-Wells model based on your experience. Without it, you won't be able to go any further, and I've explained how it works in the previous video. But if you want to try and build it on your own, here are a couple of helpful questions. Define the social situation that's making you anxious. Define your negative thoughts. Define the consequences of failure. When you feel self-conscious, what are you aware of? Do you have an image of how you think you appear? How do you feel you come across? When you thought something might happen, did you do anything to try to prevent people from noticing? Is there anything you do to try to ensure you come across well? What are the physical symptoms you experience when you're in a stressful social situation? So once you've got a model built, it's easier to troubleshoot because you can identify the cognitive mistakes you make. First exercise is rather hard to complete outside a therapy session, but I'll describe it anyway. The patient is asked to role-play a feared social situation. First attempt, you're supposed to focus attention on monitoring yourself and use your normal safety behaviors. Second attempt, you're asked to drop all the safety behaviors, and instead of focusing on yourself, you have to pay attention to the conversation and to the other person's reactions. Keeping eye contact would be good here. Afterwards, you rate your anxiety and compare both situations. Now, much to your surprise, you'll notice you felt a lot less stressed when you didn't focus on yourself and avoided the safety behaviors, which basically means that the less you think about the social situation, the less you try to come across as perfectly prepared, and the less anxious you are, and as a result, you perform a lot better in these situations. Now, moving on to the next exercise, which is based on audio and video feedback. I personally never tried this, so I'm not gonna go into detail about this one. Long story short, you're supposed to engage in stressful social situations and film it to see that your anxiety symptoms don't show as much as you think they do. So for example, you might think you stutter a lot, you skip words, you shake and you sweat. But once you film yourself, you'll see that these are barely visible, which in the future helps you take your mind off of these. Exercise number 3 is linked to exercise number 1, but we're going to take it to a whole new level. So as we've already established, a simple repetition of exposure to a feared social situation is not considered helpful. So it's not surprising that even though you're going out of your comfort zone, you still feel anxious every single time. The main goal here isn't simply getting used to a stressful situation. The trick is to actually change the way you feel about the situation through disproving your negative predictions. This exercise has 2 levels of involvement. First, you want to take it outside, by which I mean you want to truly engage in a real social situation, not just a role play during therapy. you'll need a sheet of paper to write down everything that's on your mind before, during, and after the experiment. First, you need to plan what social situation you'll engage in. For the purpose of this video, let's assume you're a student terrified of joining a conversation with people from your class. So your prediction is, I'll just say things as they come into my mind, won't plan the conversation a day earlier, and they'll think I'm stupid. 70% certain. Experiment. What did you do to test the prediction? I said whatever came to my mind and watched for their reaction instead of focusing on myself. I dropped the safety behaviors, kept eye contact to make sure I didn't miss anything. What actually happened, and was the prediction correct? I did all of the above and the group took interest. 2 people engaged in the conversation and no one laughed at me. What I learned, I am probably more acceptable than I think. Rate that belief from 0 to 100% again. You'll need to try this with different social situations. So the key here is to not just expose yourself to stresses, but to drop your safety behaviors and analyze your predictions versus what really happened. What you'll discover is that you're socially acceptable and likable without trying or preparing beforehand to be extremely interesting or smart. Now, after a while, when you begin to notice your expectations are far from reality, in a good way of course, you'll automatically start feeling more comfortable. And that's when you can take it to the next level and do something you find terrifying and unacceptable. So instead of just having a good conversation without making any mistakes, you want to do something you perceive as a mistake on purpose. Now this is aimed at your excessively high standards, known as the I need to be perfect all the time, I need to know everything, I need to sound smart, I can never make a mistake. Common situations to practice would be flash your sweaty armpits at someone, intentionally pause mid-sentence, introduce ums and ahs in speech, intentionally shake, intentionally spill a drink, intentionally get someone some chocolate around your mouth, introduce a boring topic to the conversation, express your opinion even when you know others will disagree, act stupid in front of a professional. So for example, when you gotta inflate your tire, even if you know how to do it, go and ask a guy at a gas station to do it for you. Again, it's quite important to take a mental note of what you think other people's reactions will be before you engage in any social situation that's causing you stress. You need to be able to verify whether your expectation came true. I can assure you that they won't, and that the spectrum of socially acceptable behaviors is much wider than you think it is. Of course, there will be people who laugh at you, and there will be people who assess you negatively, and in these cases it's important to take note of how many people were totally okay with what you did and how many people were negative. You'll notice that most people don't really care, and in that moment it's important to ask yourself, is this person's opinion more valid than everyone else's? Does it matter if one person disapproves? Is it really possible to please everyone every single time? If you judged someone negatively just once, would it make them worthless as a person in general? Moving on, we have to deal with the pre- and post-event anxiety. Take note of everything that goes on in your head during that period, rate it, writing down the advantages and disadvantages of thinking too much. You'll probably notice that there's a lot more factors on the negative side, and this exercise is simple in theory, but it will be quite hard to conduct at first. So basically what you want to do is try and bend the pre and post analysis of the situation. Stay mindful, and when you catch yourself thinking too much about an upcoming or a past event, just shift your attention to something else. And of course, some preparation can be beneficial. Obviously, you can't go to a presentation without knowing what you want to talk about, but don't overdo it. Stop practicing conversations in your head. Stop analyzing them when they are finished. You'll quickly notice that this reduces stress. The more spontaneous you are, the better you perform, because instead of focusing on yourself and your anxiety, you're actually focusing on what you're supposed to be doing. One last thing you can do, according to the Clark-Wells model, is to fight your general assumptions about yourself. So all that I'm weird, I'm unlikable, I'm mean kind of stuff. Obviously, all the techniques I just explained should already make you feel better. But anyway, you take an assumption for the sake of this exercise. Let's say that you're scared of being unlikable because people think you're rude. Next, you define a list of characteristics that would indicate that a person is rude, and the opposite, that a person is nice. Then, you create a chart where you rate yourself and others based on those characteristics. Rate your friends, rate your partners, rate your parents, rate other people you meet at the post office, rate authority figures, and then rate yourself. You'll notice that you're not worse than others, and most times you're probably a lot nicer. It's just the excessively high standards of social behavior you keep applying to yourself. They make you think you're worse than everyone else, but when you fairly compare yourself to others, it quickly turns out that you're the nice, quiet person, unlike that rude idiot screaming at a poor lady working at a post office. And last, but not least, keep in mind that negative responses might happen, but they might happen due to your safety behaviors. Remember, we talked about this in the previous video. If you don't talk to someone or avoid eye contact, they might actually think that you're rude or uninterested, which may trigger a negative response. And that's pretty much it for the Clark-Wells model. And remember to keep eye contact. I know it's extremely tough, but you'll quickly notice that when you actually look at people, you can see their reactions, and it turns out that they are not laughing at you. They will almost always smile back. And when you look away, you don't know how they reacted to what you said. And then your mind tries to make up for it, for this lack of information, obviously by producing worst case scenarios. Another thing is a change of perspective. Now, I know that when you have social anxiety, it seems that the whole world is focusing on you, but in reality, pretty much no one gives a shit. Same way you're mostly focused on yourself, others are focused on themselves. People who don't have social anxiety just don't have the time to process everything you do. Most people will forget, even if you do something you might think is stupid, and some won't even notice. Remember, a huge majority of people you meet in life, when you pass them on the street or at a shop, won't meet you ever again. So even if you fall over in the middle of the street, why would you care? Are you the only person to ever fall over? No. Will you meet these people ever again? Most likely, no. So yeah, sometimes you have to step back and think of the good old Tyler Durden. You are not special, you are not beautiful and unique snowflake. You're the same decaying organic matter as everything else. No one gives a fuck about you, in a good way though, so don't swing too far the other way because Tyler did, and look how he ended up. One last thing worth mentioning in this video are cognitive distortions, not to be mistaken for cognitive biases. I remember that discussing these during my therapy helped me tremendously, believe me. What's important here is to stay mindful, again, and realize when you're falling victim to one of those. When you do, you can quickly stop your mind from going further down that spiral. At first, it'll be hard, but the more you practice, the more mindful you will become and you'll start noticing them automatically. Okay, so now I'm going to briefly describe all the distortions linked to social anxiety, but I'd recommend Googling an entire list. Number 1, polarized thinking, or black or white thinking. In polarized thinking, things are black or white. We have to be perfect, or we are a failure. There's no middle ground, no shades of grey. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. This is extremely common in social anxiety. Obviously, that's not true. Most of the time, you will be falling somewhere in the middle. Number 2, overgeneralization. This cognitive distortion we come to a general conclusion based on a single incident or a single piece of evidence. If something bad happens only once, we expect it to happen over and over again. So a person may see a single unpleasant event as part of a never-ending pattern of defeat. So if one meeting goes wrong, you will assume that every single meeting will become a failure because you're a failure. Number 3, filtering. We take the negative details and magnify them while filtering out all positive aspects of a situation. For instance, a person may pick out a single unpleasant detail and dwell on it exclusively so that their vision of reality becomes darkened or distorted. And that is linked to the post-event overthinking in social anxiety. You might remember from the previous video that I still insist you watch if you haven't. Another extremely common distortion in social anxiety is number 4, jumping to conclusions. We interpret reality negatively even when there's nothing to confirm it. This splits into 2 subcategories. Number 1, fortune telling is when you anticipate that things will turn out badly and you will feel convinced that their prediction is already an established fact. Number 2, mind reading. You may assume that someone is reacting negatively towards you, but you don't actually bother to find out if you are correct, or you can't really find out if you are correct because there is no way to confirm it. Personally, I find myself falling victim to fortune telling and mind reading all the time, and using mindfulness really helps me stop the thought spiral. I think these are the most common distortions you'll find in the life of a socially anxious person, but there are at least 10 more. So again, I'd recommend googling them because fighting these will make your life so much easier and relaxed. So again, basically what you want to do here is catch yourself mentally drifting off. Now, you're talking to an authority figure, okay? You instantly start mind reading, and as soon as you catch yourself doing that, stop that thought pattern and focus on the conversation instead. As an exercise, get a pen and a sheet of paper and write down different situations in which these cognitive distortions might happen, so that it's easier for you to spot them in the future. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think we've learned a thing or two today. Let's hope that one day we'll finally be in charge of our lives. And until then, a cliche to remember: nobody's perfect. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And before you go, remember you can join my website for $3.49 per month. And yeah, this basically supports my mental health work. I've already added an exclusive short film, an 8-minute long short film that is available only over there. And yeah, this film should help you during the dark times.